So basically, see, in Tuticorin, which is primarily one of the major port and a small town, and so far we have been focusing only on the commercial aspects in the ports. And the green sounds slightly strange, even though it is now getting very much focused. So now we are get into sort of a tune of what's happening globally, and then pan India, and finally into Tuticorin. So let me, before answering your this thing, let me give a small scenario of what's happening in India in a container terminal sector, since I represent a container terminal. So there are 32 terminals in India today, out of which 20 is under major port and 12 terminals are under minor ports, out of which 20 major port terminals or terminals operating under major port are contributing 55%, whereas remaining 12 terminals are contributing 45%, predominantly by Adani ports. So they are the leaders today. So that's a broad scale. And then if you look at the kind of electric driven and the green energy, the minor ports are they are far away when compared to the terminals which are operating under the major ports. That a real maybe a hard bitten truth. That is, we'll have to agree. So as I said, if you look into the numbers under the major ports today, forget about key cranes which are already electrical driven. Whereas if you take the numbers of RTGs, the rapid air gantries, now the terminal deployed today under the major ports, still almost 40 to 50% not being electrified. They are still working using the diesel power supply. So that means again, there's a long roadmap is there for the major port to reach to the level of the Maritime India Vision of 2030, which says that even the shore power has to be done. And if you, again, the Maritime India Vision very clearly says by 2025, Indian flag vessels to be adopted to of shore power supply. But I can count the numbers of Indian flag vessels today, which is something around 15 to 20 max container vessels, Indian flag. I think nothing has been moved so far. That's again a fact, number one. And then when you talk about 2030, I can showcase again being local here. If I look at the perspective of how we are working towards moving towards the green energy. Now, Tuticorin, now we have only 2 terminals, and both are something around 1. Ours is 10 years old, whereas JM Baxi is recently opened. They are 3 years old. So they are already 90% electrified equipments. So that way there is not much worry of talking about reducing the carbon emission. But then remaining 10% is again a Herculean task. So the port has to take a I would say, 3-angle sort of a view. First, they should start with port as a whole, how to develop a ecosystem of engaging one power supplier, green source supplier, number one. And number two, the kind of whether the really port has sufficient land area available, and then how many berths have been handed over to a PPP operator, and how much financially he can take it up. Because again, the problem with the key crane, the terminal operators here, since we are under major port trust, and we have been already governed by a concession agreement, which never talk about all these things. So there is another mechanism has to be coming in to correct all those things. And then financially, whether it is viable, because port has to invest, and then the developer, the developer has to, the service provider has to move it forward, come and have a discussion with us. This is point number one, with the discussion with the terminal operator. And then when you talk about discussion with the seaside and the vessel operators. Now, the kind of vessels today, what we are operating Tuticorin, bluntly, I would say 30 container vessels in a year, even though numbers, I would say 500 vessels have been calling, vessel call has been made, container vessels, but all fixed vessels. But then they are all beyond 15 years old. As somebody put a presentation, 49% of world fleets are almost beyond 15 years old. Now, if you go and talk to that, so you need a proper mechanism to approach those kind of customers. Hey, what is your opinion? Now you are shunting between very, it's a short haul this day. And then this is another challenge. And then when you look at the land side, now every day there are 700 to 800 trucks we have been handling. Now, how about that kind of group? And what is the port's plan as well as the government? How they are planning to convert those kind of ITVs into they are all 100% diesel driven. So what is the idea? Now they are talking about by 2030 will become complete carbon certification ports. So there are a lot of effort has to be done. And then for that, I would say the blueprint has to be made first, involve all the stakeholders, then finalize one service provider first, and then let the port support. Then things can move on. It's a Herculean task, but then somebody will always say, no, China is like tiger, whereas India is like elephant. So we may raise up slow, but then when we start moving, nobody can dare us. So that way, we are very confident.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.